This season gave us a lot of things. It gave us a new World War II tech tree line. It gave us a massive Cold War balance page. But it snuck in a few things that weren't advertised on its trailer. And that was some specific World War II buffs. So what got buffed? Well, obviously, as the title and the gameplay shows, some Italians got buffed. Firstly, the Basante got buffed, and all that got was like half a second reload on all of its reloads, which still isn't enough for the Basante, poor thing. But the Rhinoceronte got some pretty significant buffs, and the next tank that you'll be seeing here on this gameplay also got some significant buffs. We'll talk about that when we get to it. But for the Rhino, it got a very nice armor buff to its turret. Those sloped bits in the front of the turret were 190, and now they're 210. This gives it way more armor, especially when using all of its gun depression, at least allowing for its turret to actually bounce some premium rounds even at some significant angle. Its hull armor is still lackluster, but that's made up for the fact that it's also gotten 2,200 hit points. No longer is this the weakest tier 10 heavy tank with 2,000 hit points. It now has 2,200, putting it above it things like a VZ55. And putting it in a place of the old T110E5. Which now the T110E5 has 2,400, but regardless. And it's made this tank honestly feel very good now. It still needs reload compensation in my opinion, for its lengthier reloads on the back end, but its better reload up in the front being 15 seconds is pretty nice. And again, all it needs is reload compensation now, and the tank is perfect for me. It's pretty darn accurate, it's pretty mobile, it now has HP, and it now has turret armor for making your hold down positions that much better. I just think this tank's good now. Now, what a nice shot between the fountain there, and we're gonna load up another round and put one into this guy. That's the benefit of having an auto reloader, right? Being able to choose when to shoot your shots, and when you have opportunities, you take them. Now, I do want to mention that these oddly specific vehicles, which the fourth tank that was buffed as well was the bar, and we'll get to that one in a different video because it deserves its own video with how ridiculous it is. But the oddly specific buffs here to World War II vehicles that wasn't mentioned anywhere other than the article, I feel I had a hand in, and I'll tell you why. Especially when we get to the Centauro buff. The Centauro buff really is evidence to me that the conversation I had really did something. And that conversation I'm talking about is one I had with Bam 1500, who is a higher up in the company, who was in my stream one night. Now, ironically, at the moment I was complaining that it seems like the devs don't listen to us. And I still sort of back that. This incident didn't change my perspective a whole ton, but it did prove to me why Bam is still my favorite person at the company. I was complaining, as I said, and Bam types up in the chat, "Hey, I'm here, we're listening." And we took the opportunity to provide some feedback, me and my chat. And instead of talking on most recent things like, you know, the winter event that was going on and stuff like that, we instead decided to talk about some old things that hadn't been addressed in a long time. And I brought up the Basante not getting a touch-up after the Italian reforge, the Italian heavy tank's initial reforge. And, well, that's why the Basante got buffed, but it's still not enough. We were then asked about the bar and what we thought about some things in it, and we gave our feedback on it and what it needed. And again, the bar got buffed. However, it wasn't exactly what we said it needed, and it's a bit ridiculous. And again, I'll get that in a different video. But I had also brought up the Rhino needing reload compensation. They didn't give it that, but also armor, and they did give it that. The HP I wasn't expecting, but I'm very happy with it. And specifically the Centauro, I had mentioned that it didn't have a gun rammer, while every other Italian auto reloader had the ability to run a gun rammer. And, well, when we get there, you'll see it has a gun rammer now. It's also got 1900 HP, we might as well go over it now, which was a nerfed value from PC tanks, who had it at 1900, and we gave it 1800. So now it has 1900. And so that conversation we had turned into actual change in the game, and it feels great. It's just I wish more things like that could happen, you know what I mean? It really truly did feel like we were being listened to at that moment, and it's because we were, and Bam's a great Bam's the best dev on the team in my opinion, because every time he talks to the community or asks questions, he's asking questions to try and understand our points of view. Whereas other devs, you know, like that infamous incident on Tankfest, where Plague was on stream and asked about the Avery, and he just brushed off all of our concerns and said, it's not overpowered, just flank it, forehead, basically, right? So that's why Bam, I hold up Bam as the example that the whole company should run by, and I wish they did. This, by the way, was my first game in the Rhino after the buff. I didn't play much more after it, so I only got this game to show you. But now we're getting on to the Centauro, which is honestly the meat and potatoes of the balance changes. Again, getting that gun rammer and having that extra 100 HP is super significant. Now, initially, they had been asked about the gun rammer on this vehicle before, and their response was, well, if we gave it a gun rammer, we'd have to nerf its reload values. And I argue, no the hell you do not. And luckily, after getting it added to the vehicle, they did not nerf the reload values. So now, your single shot gun can be competitive to other single shot medium tanks at tier 10. Which, if I'm being honest, I don't like the fact that this thing has a single shot gun in the first place. I also don't like that it has a reverse auto reloader. When this tank came out, it really felt like we were in a state of the game, and we kind of still are in that state, where the devs don't want hyper-specific vehicles that not everybody can use. They really want to give everybody a vehicle. You know, it makes sense. You want it to sell to everybody, but they really don't want hyper-specific vehicles. And auto reloaders in general aren't really liked because they, the devs, don't make them good. And it's because they use the wrong DPM value, they calculate it wrong, and they are too scared of these vehicles. But then they gave it a reverse auto reloader so that you're not encouraged to keep your magazine. You're encouraged to dump it, as I am right here, right now. And that just makes the vehicle too easy and gives it burst damage on, and then into its best single shot reload, which is just backwards. It just doesn't make competitive and logical sense to do that. But either way, they gave it the gun rammer, and now you can see my best reload is 10% better, and it feels pretty nice now. It's not fantastic, and the single shot, again, is still better, obviously, for your single shot reload, but you don't get that burst DPM at the beginning of a fight. So, I prefer to use this gun because it's the more interesting gun of the two. But now, if you choose to run the single shot, it is pretty good now. And the armor on this thing's always been good. Yes, you can heat spam into its turret face, where the gun is, where it's flatter, but as long as you're giving them that opportunity very little, you have good gun depression, you have a small hull, you have good angles and everything, and it's just a fantastic vehicle in my opinion, especially after the buff. So everyone say thank you, Bam. These buffs were definitely the standout to me this season. We have grinded out the BZ-75 at this point, and it is a fun tank at tier 10. I'm super excited to have a 650 Alpha heavy tank in addition to the 705A. This one, like, kind of the obvious choice between the two, although you do have less armor, but you have more gun depression and speed, blah, blah, blah. The thing that stands out to me the most, like I said, is these changes, and I guess there's probably some bias because they're changes that I feel like I helped implement, but Italians got some love, and, you know, historically, they don't get that. So, it's nice to see it happen. I remember, too, the Basante, I did mention, did get a buff. But like I said, the situation with the Basante was different because the Italian heavy tanks all got a reforge. Like they did, you remember when they did reforges? They did reforge the Italian heavy tank line. And usually when they did the reforges, they would include like the representative premium for the line in the changes. But for some reason, like I said earlier, they're afraid of these vehicles, and they opted to leave the Basante out of the reforge, and then said that they're gonna look into how the reforge was sort of effective with the vehicles that were touched, and see if they wanted to do the same thing to the Basante. Ooh, bad shooting there, Kung. And ultimately they decided to not touch the Basante. I remember it was like a month later, we asked them, like, did you, like, what about the Basante? And they were just like, it doesn't need anything. Confusing, because I thought it did, and it definitely does, and still needs more. Despite just now getting a buff, like I said earlier, the buff was half a second reload on all of its reloads, and like a rotation speed buff to its turret. Not very good. I feel like you could shave off another second and a half on those reloads, and it would still be mediocre, but it would be much more playable. I can definitely say. Shooting at the grill there, and we blind fired someone else. We take another shot at the grill because we notice he stopped, and we do get 2 blind fires in a row, putting us at 6,000 damage this game. I know I haven't been commentating on the game, but those were some pretty good shots if you ask me. Now, I do think I mentioned it earlier, but if not, that Rhino game was my first Rhino game in the Rhino since its buff. This, however, was not my first Centauro game with the buff. And I don't know what exactly it was, but I did record my first Centauro game, and I was going to share it because I had a similar game to the one we're having now, except I got a top gun and like 200 less damage than the total you'll see when this game ends. But it was an ace and 1800 basic speed. But at the beginning of that game, I shot at the one bot that was on either team and realized, oh yeah, it's a bot game, so I'm obviously not showing that, regardless of the impact I had on the match, and regardless of the rest of the match. I shot at the bot at the beginning. Even if I didn't shoot at the bot, I wouldn't put it in a video. So, you don't get my first Centauro game, but you do get this Centauro game. And it was a good one. I mean, you could go back and watch if you weren't paying attention, but we went to a hold down position, and we just farmed everybody in front of us with good hull armor, good DPM, good everything. And normally with these vehicles, or specifically the non-reverse auto reloaders, people aren't afraid to push you if they count your shots. You can't count a Centauro's shots because it has a reverse auto reloader, and when you count its shots and see, oh, it did shoot 4 pretty quickly, but now it's on its best reload, so the push opportunity is not there, which is why the Centauro is so much better, especially now with its buffed gun rammer and extra HP. So let me know if you guys are playing these vehicles now, and if they feel much better to you, because they should. At least these two specifically. Again, the Basante needs a bit more love. Again, too, if the reload compensation were on Italian heavy tanks, the Basante would feel much better as well, even with its longer reloads. There are plenty of times where you're about to shoot a target and they disappear because you held your shot waiting for that reload because you didn't want to put yourself at a deficit, but you know, you were close to that reload. You would have shot and gotten reload compensation for it. Stuff like that. Anyway, that'll do it for today's video. Hope you enjoyed. Expect a bar video soon as well on its buffs because it's crazy. But thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.